Welcome to my channel. Tonight, we will explore why music memories feel permanent while daily routines evaporate like morning fog. Have you ever found yourself singing every word to a song you haven't heard in 20 years, yet you can't recall what you had for lunch yesterday? It's one of those quiet mysteries that surfaces in unexpected moments. You're in the car, a song from your childhood drifts through the radio, and suddenly you're not just remembering the lyrics, you're remembering the exact vocal inflections, the way the chorus swells, maybe even the feeling of where you were the first dozen times you heard it. Every syllable arrives perfectly intact, as if it's been waiting in some pristine archive in your mind, untouched by time. And then, just hours later, someone asks what you ate for breakfast this morning, and you have to pause. You have to actually think about it. Was it toast? Cereal? Did you even eat breakfast? The contrast is almost absurd. A song from 1987 is more vivid than this morning's meal. Your brain isn't broken. It's not prioritizing the wrong things. What's happening is far more interesting than that. Your brain is using completely different storage systems for different types of experiences. And tonight, we're going to explore why music memories feel permanent while daily routines evaporate like morning fog. So if you're ready to drift into something calming, something curious, something that might just change the way you think about your own mind, then settle in. Let your body sink a little deeper. This is a journey into memory, music, and the beautiful strangeness of what we keep and what we let go. Before we can understand why song lyrics stay while breakfast fades, we need to gently dismantle an assumption most of us carry without realizing it. We tend to believe that memory works like a priority system. Important things get remembered. Trivial things get discarded. It makes intuitive sense. If your brain were a filing cabinet, you'd want the crucial documents up front and the junk mail tossed out. So when we remember a song lyric from decades ago, we might think, well, that song must have been important to me. And when we forget what we ate this morning, we think, breakfast wasn't important, so my brain didn't bother keeping it. But here's the paradox that begins to crack that assumption wide open. The song you remember might be one you never particularly liked. It might even be a jingle from a commercial, something you heard passively while doing something else entirely. Meanwhile, breakfast this morning might have been a meal you carefully prepared, something you were looking forward to, maybe even a dish you don't usually make. By any reasonable measure, breakfast was more important. You needed it for energy. You chose it deliberately. Yet the jingle stays, and the breakfast is gone. This isn't a fluke. This is a pattern, and the pattern suggests that importance, at least the way we commonly understand it, has almost nothing to do with what gets remembered. So what does? That's the question we'll be circling tonight, coming at it from different angles, letting it deepen as we go. But first, let's sit with the mystery a little longer. Let's look at the different types of memory scientists have identified, not to get technical, not yet, but just to see the landscape. There's something called semantic memory, which holds facts and knowledge. The capital of France is Paris. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. The lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody go like this. Then there's episodic memory, which holds events, personal experiences, the time you went to that concert, the conversation you had last Tuesday, what you ate for breakfast. Both types are long-term memory, meaning they're not just held for a few seconds like a phone number you're about to dial, but they don't behave the same way at all. Semantic memory tends to be durable, sticky. Once you know that Paris is the capital of France, you probably know it forever. Episodic memory, on the other hand, is fragile. It fades. It blurs. Sometimes it disappears entirely, even if the event seemed significant at the time. Song lyrics, interestingly, often get stored as semantic memory. They become facts. Breakfast, meanwhile, is episodic. It's an event. And episodic memory is where things start to vanish. But even that distinction doesn't fully explain the paradox. Because not all song lyrics become permanent semantic memories. You've heard thousands of songs in your life. Most of them are gone. You couldn't sing them if someone offered you money. So why do some stick? And why do they stick so completely, so effortlessly, that you don't even realize you've memorized them until they come flooding back? Historians of memory science will tell you this question has been asked for over a century. In the late 1800s, a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus conducted experiments on himself, memorizing lists of nonsense syllables and testing how long he retained them. He discovered what's now called the forgetting curve. Most of what we learn fades rapidly within the first day, then the rate of forgetting slows. But Ebbinghaus was working with meaningless syllables. He wasn't testing music. He wasn't testing emotion. He wasn't testing things that mattered. And that's the crack in the early research. Memory isn't just about repetition and time. It's about how an experience is packaged when it arrives. Let's take a breath here. Notice how your body feels right now. Is there tension anywhere? In your shoulders, your jaw? See if you can let it go, just a little. We're not in a hurry. This exploration unfolds slowly, the way memory itself does, the way a song sometimes surfaces unbidden in the quiet moments before sleep. We're going to stay with this mystery, but we're going to stay gently. Now, let's turn our attention to breakfast. Why is it so forgettable? You might think it's because breakfast is routine. You eat it every day, so no single breakfast stands out.
And there's truth to that. Routine is one of memory's greatest enemies. But routine doesn't fully explain it either, because you've probably had breakfasts that were different, breakfasts that broke the routine, and even those fade. Maybe you went to a new cafe. Maybe someone made you pancakes shaped like animals. Maybe you tried a dish you'd never had before. Those breakfasts had novelty, which should help memory, yet they still fade faster than a song you've heard 100 times. The answer isn't just about routine or novelty. It's about how the experience was encoded in the first place. And this is where we arrive at the edge of our first real answer. Memory scientists talk about something called encoding specificity. The principle, first articulated by Endel Tulving in the 1970s, is this: the way something is encoded determines how and whether it can be retrieved. Encoding isn't just about storing information. It's about the context, the associations, the emotional tone, the sensory details that get woven into the memory trace. And here's where music has an extraordinary advantage. Music doesn't arrive alone. It arrives with rhythm, which engages your motor systems, the parts of your brain that track timing and movement. It arrives with melody, which engages auditory processing in complex ways, creating patterns your brain finds deeply satisfying. It arrives with lyrics, which are language, meaning your brain's language centers light up. It often arrives with emotion, whether that's the emotion the song is designed to evoke, or the emotion you happen to be feeling when you heard it. And it almost always arrives with repetition. You don't hear a song once. You hear the chorus multiple times within the song. Then you might hear the song again tomorrow, next week, a month later. Each repetition strengthens the memory trace, but it's not just repetition. It's repetition layered with rhythm, melody, language, and emotion. This is what researchers call triple encoding, sometimes even quadruple encoding. The memory isn't stored in one place or one way. It's distributed across multiple brain systems, each reinforcing the others.
Now, contrast that with breakfast. You eat it. Maybe it tastes good. Maybe you're distracted, thinking about your day, scrolling through your phone, listening to a podcast. The sensory experience is real, but it's not layered. There's no rhythm. There's no melody. There's no repetition within the event itself. You don't eat the same bite of toast 4 times with slight variations, the way a chorus repeats. And unless something unusual happens, unless you burn your tongue badly or someone proposes to you over scrambled eggs, there's probably no strong emotion attached. Breakfast is encoded weakly. It's a single trace, often laid down while your attention is elsewhere. Music, meanwhile, is encoded strongly in multiple systems, with your full attention or at least your brain's full pattern recognition machinery engaged. This is the first partial answer to our mystery. It's not about importance. It's about encoding. Music is packaged in a way that makes it almost impossible to forget. Breakfast is packaged in a way that makes it almost impossible to remember. Let's deepen this. Let's go inside the brain and see what's actually happening when you hear a song versus when you eat breakfast. Neuroscientists have spent decades using brain imaging technology, fMRI, PET scans, EEG, to watch what lights up during different activities. And what they found is that music is one of the most demanding, widespread activities your brain can engage in. When you listen to music, especially music with lyrics, you're not just using your auditory cortex, the part that processes sound. You're using your motor cortex, because rhythm makes you want to move, even if you're sitting still. You're using your hippocampus, which is crucial for memory formation. You're using your prefrontal cortex, which handles attention and meaning-making. You're using your amygdala, which processes emotion. You're using Broca's area and Wernicke's area, the language centers, because lyrics are words and words have meaning. And you're using something called the default mode network, which is active when you're daydreaming, mind-wandering, connecting the music to your own life and experiences. In other words, music recruits a vast, distributed network. It's not a single system lighting up. It's many systems all talking to each other, all creating overlapping memory traces. Now let's look at breakfast. When you eat, you're using your gustatory cortex for taste, your olfactory bulb for smell, your somatosensory cortex for texture. If you're paying attention, you might engage your prefrontal cortex a little, thinking about whether you like what you're eating. But often, you're not paying full attention. You're reading the news, you're planning your day, your mind is elsewhere. And even if you are paying attention, the experience doesn't recruit the same distributed network that music does. There's no rhythm pulling in your motor cortex. There's no melody engaging complex auditory processing. There's no language, unless you're reading the cereal box. And even then, you're not encoding it the way you encode song lyrics. Breakfast is a more localized experience. It's sensory, yes, but it's not woven into as many systems. And because it's not woven into as many systems, it doesn't create as many hooks for later retrieval. Memory retrieval works through association. When you try to remember something, your brain searches for cues. The more cues available, the easier retrieval becomes. Music gives you dozens of cues. The melody can cue the lyrics. The lyrics can cue the melody. The emotion can cue both. The rhythm can cue the moment you first heard it. Breakfast gives you fewer cues. Maybe the taste could cue the memory, but you're not usually retasting breakfast later. Maybe the location could cue it, but if you eat breakfast in the same place every day, location becomes unreliable.
There's another layer here, one that takes us deeper into the mechanics of emotion and memory. Your amygdala, that almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, acts like a highlighter for memory. When you experience something emotionally arousing, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, just that it's intense, your amygdala tags that experience. It sends signals to your hippocampus saying, in effect, this matters. Store this strongly. This process is called emotional consolidation, and it's why you remember emotionally charged events more vividly than neutral ones. You remember your wedding day. You remember the day you got into a car accident. You remember the first time you fell in love, the first time your heart was broken. These aren't just stored as facts, they're stored with emotional weight, and that weight makes them durable. Now, music often comes with emotional weight. Even if the song itself is about nothing important, even if it's a silly pop song, it might have played during a meaningful moment in your life, or it might evoke an emotion directly through its melody, its tempo, its lyrics. And when emotion gets attached to memory, the memory becomes stickier. This is part of why certain songs can transport you back to a specific time and place. It's not just the song you're remembering, it's the feeling you had when you heard it. The memory of the song and the memory of the feeling are intertwined, each reinforcing the other. Breakfast, unless something unusual happens, doesn't carry that emotional charge. It's neutral. Pleasant, maybe, but not arousing in the way your amygdala cares about. And so it doesn't get tagged. It doesn't get the consolidation boost. It's stored weakly, if it's stored at all, and it fades quickly. This brings us to a question that might be forming in your mind right about now, a question that opens up yet another layer of this mystery. If emotion helps memory, and music often carries emotion, does that mean we're remembering the song, or are we remembering the moment we felt something while hearing the song? Are the lyrics themselves what's being stored, or is it the experience of the lyrics? And the answer, beautifully, is both. But they're being stored in different ways, by different systems, and this is where the distinction between semantic and episodic memory becomes crucial again. Let's explore that distinction now, because it's central to understanding why song lyrics can feel so permanent, while the moments they accompanied can fade. Semantic memory is your knowledge base. It's everything you know, stripped of context. You know that 2 + 2 = 4, but you don't remember learning it. You know your best friend's name, but you don't recall the first time you heard it. Semantic memories are decontextualized. They float free of time and place. They're facts. Episodic memory, by contrast, is your life story. It's everything that happened to you, anchored in time and place. You remember your 10th birthday party. You remember the conversation you had this morning. You remember the concert you went to last summer. Episodic memories are contextualized. They're events. And events, it turns out, are fragile. They decay, they get overwritten, they blend together. This is why you can remember that you went to concerts, plural, but struggle to remember the details of any one concert unless something unusual happened. The episodic details fade, leaving behind only the semantic gist. I like concerts. Now, song lyrics start as episodic. The first time you hear a song, it's an event. You heard it at a specific time in a specific place. But if you hear the song again and again, something interesting happens. The lyrics start to transition from episodic memory to semantic memory. They stop being about the time I heard the song and start being just the lyrics to the song. They become facts you know, detached from any specific listening experience. And semantic memory, as we've noted, is durable. It sticks around. This transition from episodic to semantic is facilitated by repetition, but it's not just about hearing the song multiple times. It's about rehearsal. Every time you sing along, even silently in your head, you're rehearsing. You're strengthening the semantic trace. And because the lyrics are language, they get processed by the same systems that handle all your other factual knowledge, which are very good at long-term storage. Meanwhile, the episodic memory of where you were when you first heard the song might fade entirely. You know the lyrics, but you have no idea when you learned them. They've become pure semantic knowledge. Breakfast, by contrast, almost never makes this transition. You don't rehearse breakfast. You don't sit around later thinking, let me recall what I ate this morning. There's no repetition. There's no transition to semantic memory. It stays episodic, and episodic memories of routine events are incredibly vulnerable. They fade within hours, sometimes minutes. So even though you experienced breakfast this morning, even though it was a real event that happened to you, it's likely already gone or well on its way to disappearing. The song lyrics, meanwhile, have been cemented into your semantic memory bank, where they'll sit, potentially, for the rest of your life. Let's pause here. Let's let that sink in for a moment. You've been carrying around song lyrics for years, maybe decades, and you didn't even try to memorize them. You weren't sitting down with flashcards. You weren't drilling yourself. They just stuck. Meanwhile, you've forgotten thousands of meals, thousands of conversations, thousands of ordinary moments that in the moment seemed perfectly memorable. This isn't a failure. This is your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. But what exactly did it evolve to do? Why would evolution favor remembering song lyrics over breakfast? The answer is that evolution doesn't care about song lyrics. Songs are too recent an invention. Humans have only been creating music, in the form we recognize today, for a tiny fraction of our evolutionary history.
But the mechanisms that make music memorable, the mechanisms of rhythm, repetition, emotion, social bonding, those are ancient. Rhythm helped our ancestors coordinate movement. Repetition helped them learn and transmit crucial survival information. Emotion helped them prioritize what mattered. Social bonding helped them survive as groups. Music hijacks all of those ancient systems. It wasn't designed to be memorable, but it fits so perfectly into the machinery of memory that it becomes unforgettable. Breakfast, on the other hand, doesn't hijack anything. It's just breakfast. Necessary, yes, but from a memory perspective, unremarkable. Now, let's introduce a paradox. We've established that repetition helps memory. You hear a song multiple times, and it sticks. But here's the paradox. Repetition can also destroy memory. If you do something over and over again in exactly the same way, it becomes invisible. This is called habituation. Your brain stops paying attention because there's nothing new to process. It's efficient. Why waste cognitive resources on something that's always the same? And this is part of why breakfast fades. If you eat the same breakfast in the same place at the same time every day, your brain habituates. It stops encoding the details because the details never change. The experience becomes a blur, a generalized sense of "I eat breakfast," rather than a series of distinct memories. But wait, doesn't that contradict what we just said about songs? You might hear the same song hundreds of times. Why doesn't your brain habituate to it? Why doesn't the song become invisible? This is where the nature of music does something clever. Music is repetitive, yes, but it's not monotonous. Even when you hear the same song, there's variation. The melody moves, the rhythm has dynamics, the emotion shifts from verse to chorus. And perhaps most importantly, you rarely hear a song in exactly the same context twice. One time you're in the car, another time you're at a party, another time it comes on the radio while you're doing dishes. The song stays the same, but the context varies, and that variation prevents habituation. Each listening experience is slightly different, and that slight difference is enough to keep your brain engaged. There's also a deeper reason why repeated songs don't habituate the way repeated breakfasts do. It has to do with how your brain processes patterns. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It's constantly looking for structure, predictability, meaning. Music is pure pattern. Rhythm is pattern. Melody is pattern. Song structure, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, is pattern. And your brain finds patterns deeply satisfying. When you recognize a pattern, when you anticipate the next note and it arrives exactly as expected, your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine. It feels good. This is why music is pleasurable. It's not just about the sound, it's about the prediction, the anticipation, the satisfaction of being right. And because there's a reward every time you hear the song, a little burst of, "Yes, I know this, I predicted this correctly," your brain stays engaged. It doesn't habituate. It enjoys the repetition. Breakfast, unless you're deeply mindful about it, doesn't offer that same reward. There's no pattern to recognize, no anticipation, no dopamine hit for predicting what the next bite will taste like. It's just eating. Functional, necessary, but not engaging in the way music is. Let's zoom out for a moment and think about what all of this means. We've explored encoding specificity, how music gets layered into multiple brain systems. We've looked at the neuroscience, how music recruits distributed networks, while breakfast stays localized. We've examined the role of emotion, how the amygdala tags certain experiences as worth keeping. We've distinguished semantic from episodic memory, how facts outlast events. We've considered the paradox of repetition, how music uses it without triggering habituation. All of these mechanisms are pieces of the puzzle, but there's still more to understand. Because memory isn't just about what happens inside your individual brain. Memory is also social, cultural,
collective. And this brings us to a fascinating dimension of why certain songs become generational anthems. why entire populations remember the same lyrics, why some songs feel like they belong to everyone. This is the realm of cultural memory transmission, and it's where our story takes on a larger, almost anthropological scale. Think about the songs that define generations. For people who came of age in the 1960s, it might be Imagine by John Lennon or Respect by Aretha Franklin. For those in the 1980s, maybe Livin' on a Prayer by Bon Jovi or Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. For millennials, perhaps Mr. Brightside by The Killers or Hey Ya by Outkast. These aren't just songs. They're cultural touchstones. They mark time. They evoke not just personal memories, but shared memories, collective experiences. And the reason they become so deeply embedded isn't just because they're catchy or well-written, though they often are. It's because they're reinforced socially. You hear them at parties, at weddings, at sporting events. You hear other people singing them. You see them referenced in movies and TV shows. The culture keeps replaying them, and every replay strengthens the memory trace, not just in your brain, but in the collective consciousness of everyone around you. This is cultural memory transmission, and it works through a combination of repetition, emotion, and social reinforcement. When a song becomes associated with a particular era, especially an era when you were young and your brain was most plastic, most receptive to new experiences, that song gets encoded with the weight of identity. It's not just a song I like, it becomes a song from my time, a song that represents who I was, a song that everyone my age knows. And that collective encoding is incredibly powerful. There's a concept in sociology called collective memory, which is the idea that groups of people can share memories, or at least share the frameworks through which memories are understood. Collective memory isn't literally one memory stored in multiple brains. It's more like a shared narrative, a common reference point. And music is one of the most effective vehicles for collective memory, because music is inherently social. Even when you listen alone, you're often listening to something created by others, performed by others, enjoyed by others. Music connects you to a community, even if that community is invisible. And when a song becomes a hit, when it's played everywhere, it enters the collective memory. It becomes part of the soundtrack of a particular time and place. And because it's reinforced not just by your own repeated listening, but by society's repeated playing, it becomes even more durable. This is why you can meet a stranger who grew up in the same era as you, in a completely different part of the world, and discover that you both know every word to the same song. You've never met before. You have no shared personal history, but you have a shared cultural history, and the song is the artifact that proves it. Breakfast obviously doesn't work this way. Breakfast is private, individual. Even if you eat the same brand of cereal as millions of other people, you're not eating it together. There's no collective experience, no social reinforcement, no cultural narrative being built around what you had for breakfast on a particular Tuesday in March. Breakfast stays personal, and personal episodic memories, as we've seen, are fragile. They don't get the boost of social repetition. They don't get turned into cultural touchstones. They fade in isolation. Now, there are exceptions. There are meals that do become memorable, that do get encoded strongly. Holiday meals, for example, Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas breakfast, your birthday cake. These meals are different. They're not routine. They're marked as special. They often happen in social contexts, with family or friends. They're tied to rituals, to traditions, to emotions. And because of all that, they get encoded more strongly. You might remember Thanksgiving dinner from 10 years ago, even if you can't remember breakfast from yesterday. The difference isn't the food itself. It's the context, the emotion, the social meaning, the way the experience was packaged when it arrived. Let's shift now to a more philosophical question, one that might seem abstract, but is actually deeply practical. What is worth remembering? If memory isn't driven by importance, at least not importance as we usually define it, then what determines what we keep? And perhaps more provocatively, is memory's selectivity a feature or a bug? We tend to feel frustrated when we can't remember something we think we should. You forget an acquaintance's name at a party, and you feel embarrassed. You forget what you did last weekend, and you worry you're losing your sharpness. But what if memory's selectivity is actually one of its greatest strengths? What if forgetting is just as important as remembering? Let's explore this. Imagine if you remembered everything. Every breakfast, every conversation, every moment of every day, stored in perfect detail, forever. At first, that might sound appealing. You'd never lose a memory. You'd never forget a name or a face. You'd have a complete archive of your life. But it wouldn't take long for that archive to become overwhelming. There's actually a real condition, extremely rare, called highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM, where people remember almost every day of their lives in extraordinary detail. You can give them a date, say March 15th, 2003, and they can tell you what day of the week it was, what the weather was like, what they ate, what they wore, what happened. It sounds like a superpower. But many people with HSAM describe it as exhausting. They can't forget. Painful memories stay vivid. Trivial details clutter their minds. They struggle to move on from the past because the past is always present, always accessible, always demanding attention. Most of us don't have that problem. Most of us forget, and we forget a lot. And that forgetting is adaptive. It's necessary. Your brain isn't trying to be a perfect recorder. It's trying to be efficient. It's trying to prioritize what might be useful later, while discarding what probably won't be. Breakfast, in most cases, won't be useful later. Knowing what you ate doesn't help you navigate the world, doesn't help you solve problems, doesn't contribute to your identity or your relationships, so your brain lets it go. Song lyrics, on the other hand, might be useful. Not in a practical sense. You're not going to survive or die based on whether you remember the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody, but in a social and emotional sense. Knowing the lyrics to popular songs helps you bond with others. It gives you shared cultural references. It provides comfort, nostalgia, joy, and so your brain keeps them. This selectivity isn't random. It's guided by principles that made sense in our evolutionary past and still make sense in many ways today.
What is worth remembering? If memory isn't driven by importance, at least not importance as we usually define it, then what determines what we keep? And perhaps more provocatively, is memory's selectivity a feature or a bug? We tend to feel frustrated when we can't remember something we think we should. You forget an acquaintance's name at a party, and you feel embarrassed. You forget what you did last weekend, and you worry you're losing your sharpness. But what if memory's selectivity is actually one of its greatest strengths? What if forgetting is just as important as remembering? Let's explore this. Imagine if you remembered everything. Every breakfast, every conversation, every moment of every day, stored in perfect detail, forever. At first, that might sound appealing. You'd never lose a memory. You'd never forget a name or a face. You'd have a complete archive of your life. But it wouldn't take long for that archive to become overwhelming. There's actually a real condition, extremely rare, called highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM, where people remember almost every day of their lives in extraordinary detail. You can give them a date, say March 15th, 2003, and they can tell you what day of the week it was, what the weather was like, what they ate, what they wore, what happened. It sounds like a superpower. But many people with HSAM describe it as exhausting. They can't forget. Painful memories stay vivid. Trivial details clutter their minds. They struggle to move on from the past because the past is always present, always accessible, always demanding attention. Most of us don't have that problem. Most of us forget, and we forget a lot. And that forgetting is adaptive. It's necessary. Your brain isn't trying to be a perfect recorder. It's trying to be efficient. It's trying to prioritize what might be useful later, while discarding what probably won't be. Breakfast, in most cases, won't be useful later. Knowing what you ate doesn't help you navigate the world, doesn't help you solve problems, doesn't contribute to your identity or your relationships, so your brain lets it go. Song lyrics, on the other hand, might be useful. Not in a practical sense. You're not going to survive or die based on whether you remember the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody, but in a social and emotional sense. Knowing the lyrics to popular songs helps you bond with others. It gives you shared cultural references.
It provides comfort, nostalgia, joy, and so your brain keeps them. This selectivity isn't random. It's guided by principles that made sense in our evolutionary past and still make sense in many ways today.
Your brain prioritizes emotionally charged experiences because emotions often signal importance. It prioritizes repeated experiences because repetition suggests something is stable and worth knowing. It prioritizes socially reinforced information because being in sync with your group increases survival. Music hits all three. Breakfast typically hits none. But here's the beautiful, slightly melancholic part of this realization. Memory isn't really about the past. It's about the future. When your brain decides what to keep and what to discard, it's not trying to create an accurate historical record. It's trying to build a useful predictive model. It's asking, what information will help me navigate similar situations in the future? And most breakfasts, most daily routines, don't offer much predictive value. They're just repetitions of things you already know how to do. You know how to eat breakfast. You don't need to remember each one. But songs, emotions, social connections, cultural touchstones, those have future value. They help you understand yourself, connect with others, find meaning, and so your brain holds on to them. This is why memory's quirks, its frustrating selectivity, its preference for music over meals, isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Your brain is making a bet about what will matter, and more often than not, it's right. You don't miss the forgotten breakfasts, but you treasure the songs. You return to them. They become part of who you are. And in that sense, your memory is working exactly as it should. Now, if you're still with me, you might be wondering, is there a way to make daily life more memorable without turning every moment into a major event? Can you borrow some of the mechanisms that make music stick and apply them to the moments you actually want to keep? The answer is yes, but gently. We're not trying to optimize your life into some kind of memory boot camp. We're just noticing what helps. First, attention. Music captures attention, often effortlessly. Breakfast doesn't. So if you want to remember breakfast or any routine moment, you have to give it attention. That doesn't mean staring intensely at your cereal. It means being present, putting the phone down, noticing the taste, the texture, the warmth of the mug in your hands. Attention is the gateway to encoding. Without it, nothing gets stored. Second, emotion. Music often comes with emotion or triggers it. Breakfast usually doesn't. But you can create emotional moments around daily routines. Gratitude is one way. Taking a moment to feel genuinely grateful for the food, for the morning, for the quiet, tags the experience with a positive emotion. It won't make every breakfast unforgettable, but it might make some of them stick. Third, novelty. Music, even repeated songs, has variation. Breakfast often doesn't. So introduce variation. Eat somewhere different. Try a new recipe. Eat with someone. Novelty signals to your brain that something is worth encoding. Fourth, storytelling. Music is narrative. Even instrumental music often has a structure that feels like a story. Breakfast is just breakfast, but you can turn it into a story. You can narrate it, even silently. This is the morning I decided to wake up early and watch the sunrise while I ate. Suddenly, it's not just breakfast. It's an event with context, with meaning, and events get encoded better than routines. Fifth, social sharing. Music is reinforced socially. You hear it with others, talk about it, share it. Breakfast is usually solitary or routine. But if you share it, if you tell someone about what you made, if you eat with someone and really talk, if you take a photo, not just to post, but to mark the moment, you're adding social reinforcement. And social reinforcement strengthens memory. None of these techniques require effort. Not really. They just require a subtle shift in awareness. And the paradox is that the moments you try to make memorable might not be the ones that stick. Because memory is slippery. It has its own logic. But by understanding that logic, by understanding why music sticks and breakfast fades, you give yourself a better chance of holding on to what matters. Not everything. You can't remember everything, and you shouldn't try. But maybe a few more moments than you would have otherwise.
a few more mornings that don't dissolve into the fog of forgotten routines.
Let's bring all of this together now. We've journeyed through neuroscience and psychology, through the mechanics of encoding and the architecture of memory systems. We've seen how music, almost by accident, became the perfect memory vehicle: layered, emotional, repetitive, social, rewarding. We've seen how breakfast, and most of daily life, doesn't stand a chance against that combination of factors. And we've arrived at a deeper understanding. Memory isn't about importance. It's about encoding conditions. It's about how an experience is packaged when it enters your mind. Some experiences come wrapped in multiple sensory and emotional layers, with built-in repetition and social reinforcement, and those experiences stick. Others come alone, in silence, with little to distinguish them from the thousands similar experiences before and after, and those experiences fade. This isn't a judgment on what should matter. It's just a description of what does in the currency of memory. And there's something almost poetic about it. The fact that a silly song from your childhood can outlast the serious, important moments of your adult life. The fact that your brain holds on to melodies and lyrics with more fidelity than it holds on to most of your lived experience. It reveals something about what it means to be human. We are not perfect recorders. We are not objective historians of our own lives. We are storytellers, pattern seekers, meaning makers. And the things we remember aren't necessarily the things that happened. They're the things that resonated, the things that repeated, the things that made us feel. So when you find yourself singing every word to a song you haven't heard in 20 years, don't just marvel at your brain's capacity for storage. Marvel at what it chose to store. Marvel at the fact that this particular combination of notes and words and emotions became part of you, woven so deeply into your neural networks that it feels effortless to recall. And when you forget what you ate for breakfast, don't despair. You're not losing your mind. You're not failing at memory. You're just experiencing the natural selectivity of a system that has to make choices, that can't keep everything, that prioritizes patterns and emotions and social bonds over isolated routine events. Your memory is doing what it evolved to do.
It's keeping what might matter and letting go of what probably won't. And most of the time, quietly, without you even noticing, it gets it right. The songs stay, the breakfasts fade, and in the space between those two, in the mystery of what we keep and what we lose, we find something essential about the architecture of human consciousness. We are beings who remember melodies more than meals, who hold on to choruses more than daily routines, who treasure the soundtrack of our lives, even as the details of the days blur together. And maybe that's exactly as it should be. As we move toward the close of this exploration, let's soften our focus. Let's stop analyzing and start simply being with the mystery. You've learned why memory works the way it does. You've seen the mechanisms, the brain systems, the evolutionary logic. But knowledge isn't the same as understanding, and understanding isn't the same as acceptance. Can you accept that you're going to forget most of your life? Can you accept that the things you remember won't always be the things you think you should? Can you accept that a random song will, in all likelihood, outlast most of your carefully made plans, your important meetings, your deliberate efforts to create memorable moments? There's a strange peace in that acceptance. It means you can stop trying so hard to hold on to everything. You can stop feeling guilty for forgetting. You can stop worrying that forgetting means you didn't care or that you're losing yourself. Forgetting is not loss. Forgetting is selection. It's your brain making space, choosing what to keep, trusting that the important things, whatever important really means in the language of neurons and emotion, will find a way to stay. And the songs will stay. Even when you're very old, even when more recent memories have started to fade, the songs from your youth will likely still be there.
This is something researchers have found again and again. People with Alzheimer's disease, who can't remember what they did an hour ago, can still sing songs from their 20s. Music memory is that durable. It's often one of the last things to go. And there's something profoundly moving about that. The fact that when so much else has been lost, the melodies remain, the lyrics remain, the feeling of the song, the way it moves through you, remains. It's as if music becomes the thread that holds the self together when other threads have frayed. This isn't just poetic speculation. It's clinically documented. Music therapy for dementia patients works precisely because music memory is so resilient. You can play someone a song from their past, and suddenly they're present again, alive again, connected to who they were. The song is a bridge. And that's what music has always been, really, a bridge between past and present, between self and other, between the conscious mind and something deeper, something that doesn't have words, only rhythm and melody and feeling. So tonight, as you prepare to drift off, maybe you'll hear a song in your mind. Maybe a song from your childhood will surface, unbidden, the way they do in quiet moments. And when it does, you'll know why. You'll know that it's not random, it's not meaningless. It's your brain doing what it does best, holding on to patterns, holding on to emotion, holding on to the threads of experience that make you who you are. You'll know that the song is there because your brain wove it into multiple systems, tagged it with emotion, reinforced it through repetition, connected it to your social world, and found in it something worth keeping. And you'll know that the breakfast you can't remember, the one from this morning or last week or 10 years ago, isn't missing because you failed. It's missing because your brain, in its quiet wisdom, decided it didn't need to be kept. The breakfast served its purpose. It nourished you. And then it dissolved, as most things do, back into the undifferentiated flow of experience. But the song remains. The song, somehow, always remains. Let that be a comfort. Let it be a reminder that you are not the sum of everything you've experienced. You are the sum of what you've kept. And what you've kept, whether you chose it consciously or not, is a reflection of the deepest architecture of your mind. You are made of melodies and emotions, of patterns and social bonds, of moments that resonated so strongly they couldn't be forgotten. You are made of songs.
And that's a beautiful way to be made. So as you close your eyes tonight, as your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to drift, know that the songs will be there in the morning. The lyrics you learned decades ago will still be intact, waiting for the right cue to bring them forward. And you don't have to do anything to keep them. They keep themselves. They are permanent guests in the house of your memory, and they've made themselves at home. Let them stay. Let them play softly in the background as you fall asleep. Let them remind you that memory, for all its quirks and frustrations, is also a gift. The gift of continuity. The gift of identity. The gift of knowing that some things, some beautiful, inexplicable things, will stay with you, no matter how much time passes. The songs will stay, and in staying, they prove that you were here, that you felt, that you lived. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Rest now. Let the music carry you. Let memory do what it does best, and trust that when you wake, the things worth keeping will still be there, humming quietly, waiting for you to remember.